Welcome to another amazing conversation. I am joined here today with Chantel. I'm so excited to be talking with her today. We're going to be diving into weaving timelines and embracing multidimensional potentials. And I know that that's a lot of really fancy words. And so, really, the first question that we want to dive into is what do we mean when we say weaving timelines and embracing multidimensional potentials? And really, what we're looking at with this conversation is a new spiritually aligned take on end of year reflections and New Year's resolutions. So, as we're looking back on everything that happened this year, the good, the bad, the ugly, the in between, how can we pull out the meaning and the lessons from those things so that as we look back on that timeline, we can really embrace everything that's brought us to this now present moment? And then looking to the future, instead of, setting our New Year's resolutions that we often break by January 5th, looking at what are the things that we can align ourselves to? How can we look at the array of potentials that we have for what's coming to us in 2025 and make sure that we're ending this year really aligned towards what we want to experience? A lot of times at this end of the year, we come into the final days feeling really overwhelmed. Like we just feel like we're kind of holding on to everything that we learned and experienced from the year before. And at the same time, we're also trying to hold everything together for the holidays, for our family, for ourselves. And it can feel really overwhelming and lead us to stepping into the year focusing on what we don't want to bring in. A lot of times we set our resolutions based on, well, I don't want to feel this way, so I'm going to do this instead. Or I don't want to repeat this experience from last year. And so I'm going to set my resolution to make sure that I don't experience that. But because we live in this universe of yeses, and whether we're looking at our psychology and neurology, or even just the energetics of what's happening in the world around us, we know that we're always going to be getting back whatever we're feeling inside. And so if we're focused on those negatives, if we're focused on, wow, these parts of the year were really hard, and I don't want that to happen again next year, we're actually putting our energy into that negativity, into that cycle of I don't want that, and therefore I'm putting more attention on it. And so today's conversation is hopefully going to give us a different perspective of how we can reflect on the year that we've just experienced and pull all of the beauty and the meaning from it, even from those difficult experiences, and look at how we can align ourselves to what we want to call in and where we want to go next year, so that we're really looking at that forward based momentum, both in our mind and the goals, quote unquote, that we set for ourselves, but also in our energy, and making sure that we are connected to the timeline and the potential that we want to be experiencing next year. And so that's really where we're taking today's conversation from. Chantel, where do you want to go with this?
Well, it's such a big conversation, but you explained it so well. So I think going back to we are in this 3D reality, so to speak, right? Knowing that we have multiple dimensions, multiple realities, because we're multiple beings, right? And so if we're in the 3D and are shifting, ascending, going within, doing all of that to get to the 5D, which is kind of the big topic of our timeline right now is on our planet, but it is recognizing that what we think, what energy we put out is the energy that gets matched. So like you were saying, when we're really focused on the negative, we're going to experience more negative experiences versus when we can just see the negative for the lessons that we needed to learn for whatever reason that is, and recognize the positive in it and just focus in on that piece of it. That's going to bring in more positive experiences for us. So it's really like if you have, say, several different choices to make or whatever, if you choose the one that brings in the most joy, that is putting you on the timeline of expansion for yourself. And so it really is recognizing for our highest potential, for our highest expansion, to always move towards the greatest joy and happiness that it possibly can bring us. And so I really do invite this for us and for our listeners is really to look at what is bringing you joy and what is bringing you doubt and worry and sadness and all the lower vibrations of emotions, which are important too, but it's important to recognize them and observe them, and then jump over to the more higher vibration of self and thought and emotions and everything, because that is what's going to bring us forward in a higher timeline. And when we are able to recognize all of the negative timelines, they do collapse. And so then we can start to build on that trajectory of positive energy and opportunities, because then we're creating the alignment for ourselves. Like if there's a job we want, if there's a relationship if we want that we want, if there's some opportunity that we're seeking, but we're always the naysayer, the doubter, and all of that, it's not going to open up for you. And if it does open up, it will not be for your highest potential, because it's probably going to bring you forward a lower vibration partnership or a lower position or a lower paying job or whatever it is. So it's always maintaining this concept and understanding the universe is going to match your energy, your thoughts, and what it is that you're seeking.
Absolutely. And what I love about this conversation is that I can hear my more science-minded folks in the background thinking to themselves, well, there's no way that that's real. That's all woo-woo, quote unquote stuff. And what I love about this conversation is we can really bring in this question of, okay, yeah, absolutely. Maybe we don't have hard scientific facts to show that this is exactly what's happening. We do know that, time is relative. We do know that our perception changes the outcome of our reality. We know a lot of these things from scientific experiments, but our invitation for you today is what if? What if it was true? What if the way that you felt, the way that you thought about yourself actually did have some kind of impact on your reality? I'm not saying that, you start thinking positive about yourself and your entire reality is going to turn on its head and you'll wake up tomorrow rich and famous and happy, but can we look at even just the little bits of evidence that we do have for this? And this is where I love to bring in Dr. Masaru Emoto's work with water, where he took different samples of the same water and he said different things to them. He said things like, I love you, you're beautiful, thank you. And he said things like, I hate you, you're ugly, you're a disappointment. And then he froze the water and he looked at the crystalline structures that the water made under a microscope. And he very conclusively showed that the water that was spoken to in a positive way, or that was sent loving intentions, or had a loving word written on it and taped to the bottom of the glass, actually formed these really gorgeous, symmetrical snowflake patterns. Whereas the ones that were spoken to in a hateful way or had the quote unquote ugly or lower words taped to the bottom didn't form structures at all, or they were incomplete, or they were broken. And it's little things like this where we can really take a moment to step back and recognize that we as humans, as human bodies, are more than 75% water. And so if one simple I love you can have that much of an impact on a little ounce sample of water, how much of an impact are your thoughts having just on the water in your body? And thinking about how that is obviously going to impact how we feel at a very basic level. We can understand that. And we know this with things, especially in the holiday season. We know when we don't eat well, we feel bad. And we know when we feel bad, our thoughts go wrong. And we often know that when we wake up in those moods where we just feel kind of cranky and grouchy, everything else in the day starts to go worse and worse and worse, and it starts to snowball. And we can look at that from an energetic standpoint and really look at it as, yeah, when our energy is in one state, that's going to be reflected back to us. We can also look at it from a psychological point of view and look at things like our reticular activating system, which is this lovely little part in your brain that essentially, when you're feeling something, when you're thinking something, it's going to make sure that you are more aware of things that are like that thing. This is the reason that when you buy a new car, suddenly there are 50 of them on the road. It's not that the number of those cars has changed, it's just that your brain's priority and focus has shifted. And because of the way that your brain is developed and made, it's going to make you more aware of the things that you're focused on. And this is part of why, again, whether we're choosing this psychological focus or this energetic focus, this is part of why, as we come to the end of the year, it is so important to really reflect on what emotions, what perspective about the year that we just experienced are we holding on to? And this is where even just a simple journaling exercise where you write down everything you can remember from the year, whether you want to take that from a crown chakra, big picture perspective, and just look at, the big things. Like for me this year, I went to England twice, I got married, I went on a vision quest, those kinds of big picture things. Or do you want to look at all of the nitty gritty details. And, I had this personal experience in May that was really difficult, or my friend had a really interesting conversation with me in June. Like, do we want to get really nitty gritty? But either way, looking at, can you list out all of the things about your year that really impacted you, positive, negative, or otherwise? And can you systemize those? Can you put a star next to the ones that feel quote unquote positive and a circle next to the ones that feel quote unquote negative, and really look at, as you're looking at those, especially those negative ones, what's the lesson that you learned from that? What's something that you're taking away from that? What was a positive or meaningful, if we can't get to positive, right? What was a meaningful experience or lesson that you took from that experience? If you lost a loved one this year, can you find some of that meaning and beauty of life in the fact that all of your family members came together and were supporting each other? Can we look and find those little threads of meaning and beauty that weave through everything, so that we're not taking only the heavy emotions with us into the end of the year? Because again, we know, whether we're looking at how our thoughts impact water, or how our reticular activating system is functioning, or just the fact that the universe reflects back to us what we're feeling and experiencing, we know that if we're pulling only the heavy things, if we're feeling really weighed down by our experiences or the lessons, or even if they're just jumbled and we don't really have a clear feeling one way or another, we know that as we bring those into the end of the year, that's going to set the stage for what happens next year. There's this old um, myth, I suppose you could say, and I don't exactly know where it comes from, but it's essentially this idea that the way that you spend the first hour after midnight on New Year's Eve is a forecast, essentially, for how you're going to spend the rest of the year. And I don't necessarily believe that's true, but the idea of it is really beautiful, because it's really this invitation to question, what ideas, emotions, thoughts, and perceptions about yourself are you bringing into a new year? And are those the thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs about yourself that you want to be bringing into a new year? And so this is really the foundation for this conversation: is, can we invite you into a space where, whether it's in a conversation with a friend, or it's in your journal, or it's just talking to yourself while you're in the car, can you go back through the year that you've had and look at what experiences had a lot of meaning to me this year, positive, negative, or otherwise? Can I find gratitude for those positive experiences? And for the more negative ones, can I pull out something that I learned, something that I'm taking away, something that can help me align towards what I want next year? So that you can weave all of these different timelines that you've had over the last year together to arrive at this point. Because often what happens is, as we have all of these different experiences happening, and we have the negative emotions and the positive emotions and all of it, if we aren't taking the time to process those, if we're not taking the time to acknowledge how those made us feel or what we learned from them, those timelines, those energy strands are just still active in our being. They haven't gotten woven in, they haven't gotten integrated into our energy, our psychology, whatever you want to phrase that as. And so if we take the time to really acknowledge each and every one that's really pulling for our energy, that's pulling for our awareness and taking up a lot of space in our brains, we give it the chance to be integrated back into the braid of our present moment, in what we're experiencing and who we are, rather than being these loose strands that feel like they're pulling our energy every which way. And that's really the invitation here: is, can we weave all of those strands back together, so that here in the present moment, we can fully arrive and then make a conscious, intentional decision about where we want to go next year.
Absolutely. I think what you were explaining about what we're taking into our next year, it really is this cycle of self, right? So it's the hope is that through a year, as we, gain more wisdom, more knowledge, more experiences, that we will become like a more advanced version of ourself, right? And that doesn't always happen, because at the end of the year, sometimes, when we look at the beginning of a year, there's so much optimism. We're looking at the next 12 months. We feel like we just went through a whole cycle of the year before. We feel like there's new beginnings and all this stuff. And then as a year goes on, it's like by the time we get to December, we get to the end of the year, a lot of people do feel depleted and tired and washed out, And so it really is coming back to this space of understanding that there are cycles within our seasons that weave with us, that ebb and flow with us. And as we are in winter months, we are in this more low-key energy of thought and introspection and all of that. So recognizing that too, that it is a time for us to look back on our last year. It is a time to look at all the positives that we've experienced, all the negatives that we have experienced, and what the lessons are. And like you're saying, if that first hour after midnight or the first day of the new year represents the beginning and the rest of the year, then it's kind of like, why not come forward in the most positive way that you can, right? And it doesn't mean go set all these goals. And I understand, like, that's what we do, right? Is we set all these goals and we're like, okay, we're going to start working out. We're going to eat better. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then yet, like you said, by January 5th, we're done doing those. So it really is creating tangible goals and tangible visions that you want for yourself. And so really, if we want to play the what if game, what if we are these expansive beings energetically that sees these bigger pictures, that has this greater awareness, this unlimited consciousness, and that our minds create a more small thinking process by thinking there are no timelines, that we don't have any effect on our on our future, on our timelines, on the reality that we bring in, on what we manifest. And so that for me is, I always try to play with the higher conscious level game of, what if this is where I'm supposed to be, but I'm creating this really small intention for myself because my mind can only fathom so much. You know, like when you said, we're not going to wake up tomorrow and be a millionaire, right? Yet it happens to people every day, you know? So there are realities that this happens, and why not us? So it's also thinking about, why can't it be you? Why can't, when we put these limitations of, I can never achieve that position, or I can never go get that degree, or I can never make $1 million, we're creating limitations to ourselves before we even get started. So there's no opportunity for us to ever achieve it because we're already down playing ourselves. And so it's the opportunity of always saying, why can't I make that? Why can't $1 million come into my reality? Why can't I go have that degree or that position or that love or whatever it is? It's really just having that higher expansion of thought and mind and emotion. And know when you put it forward, it's like acting as if it's happening right now. It's already yours. Know that it is. Claim it. Know it. It's yours to own and claim and say, hey, I already have it. And looking through my past year, it's like, when at the beginning of the year, when I was looking at transitioning from my 9 to 5 into being a full-time business owner and doing everything I do here and in my personal business and everything, there was a lot of fear. Is this going to work out? Am I going to be successful? What will the end of the year look like for me? Right. And so, with the support of my husband and family and all that, and me going out there and doing the work, I had to trust and believe that the universe had my back. I had to trust and believe that I have a soul contract that's going to pull me forward. And with that, those are the timelines that I chose. So I was always in a conscious decision making of choosing the timeline that's going to bring me forward into the reality that I wanted versus backpedaling into the reality I didn't, which I think a lot of us do that. We play this wishy-washy game of, because fear comes in and we're like, is this really meant for me? Can I really do this timeline jump? Can I really create a different reality for myself? And yes, you can. Because what ends up happening if we don't make those decisions, we find ourselves stuck and stagnant in the same experiences that we've already had for many years. And that is the cycle that comes around. So once you've learned a lesson, it's like, when it comes back around, are you going to make the same decision? Or are you going to say, nope, learn that decision, and now I'm going to jump over here and make a different decision so I can have a different reality? And that really is how it happens. It can be really simple, but our mind makes it really complicated. And it likes to keep us in our box and likes to keep us safe and likes to say, hey, remember, we're safe over here. You don't need to venture off over there because we don't know what the outcome is. And you're not meant to know the outcome. You're just meant to know the steps to move forward and to have that expansive energy and expansive vision and be the visionary in your life. And recognize when we are coming from, bringing in the archetypes. If you come from a victim state of point of view, you're going to create a victim experience. If you come from an expansive, like the magician kind of energy, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to be the liberator, I'm going to be the visionary, I'm going to be this and that, you're going to create that reality because that's the line of the lens of scope that you're looking through. And so it really is, how are you seeing the world? How are you seeing your world, and how do you see yourself? And when you can step into the power of you, you really get to expand in your reality and create a whole different life here on earth. And, there's a lot of times people say, oh, that feels like it was a chapter ago. We can create so many different realities in our life. Like we're creating novels, like we're writing books, and it's just one lifetime, but yet how many versions of yourself have you already lived? And those are all timelines, because every decision we make creates a different timeline for ourselves. And I was listening to a podcast or a message or something, and I really liked how they put it. And they're showing it like, if we are the consciousness like the sun, and the rays of the sun are all the timelines or parallel universes that we are creating, see that as your life. Like if you're putting this ray of light out, which timeline do you see yourself? Be the visionary of that and timeline jump so that you can say, that one didn't work for me. That created a lot of chaos, a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm. But hey, this one over here feels really, really good. I'm relaxed. Um, I'm more into my own emotions and my own thoughts, and I'm, feeling more expansive over here. Stay there. Continue on that path, and that will bring you forward.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about how we see the world is going to set the stage for what we welcome in, because this actually ties directly back into the shamanic perspective of life. Because in addition to being, the medicine man and the healer for their community, shamans were also basically the truth keepers. They were the ones that understood that the structure of a culture, the structure of our individual lives is built on the stories we tell ourselves. It's built on how we perceive the world, because our perceptions and our beliefs about ourselves and the world are what inform our actions. And this is part of why, a lot of times when we look at shamans throughout history, they were kept in relative isolation. It's not because they were hermits and they didn't want to connect with the people, it was because they were tasked with keeping the true storyline together, so that when someone came to them in illness, when someone came to them in frustration or whatever it was, their job was to look into that person and see, where have they stopped telling the capital T true stories? Where have they gone away from their soul truth, and how can we bring them back into alignment? And this is the work that we are all doing constantly, because like Chantel was saying, we all have often these limiting perspectives of self. And this is where you hear us talk about all the time, our limiting beliefs, but it's so true, because we can only function within the scope of what we believe is possible. Our beliefs about ourselves and about the world form the basis for every action that we make. And so, if we believe that we aren't worthy of happiness, if we believe that we don't deserve a good experience, if we believe that we are a disappointment, or we have failed, or we're always going to fall short of the mark, or that we're always going to fail, whatever it is, that is the frame of reference that we're going to use to make future decisions. And this is where we can bring in this understanding that our minds are not capable of looking into the future in an objective way. I often tell our students that our minds are like an Excel spreadsheet. You can fill it with data and you can use the functions to, add them all together or average them out or predict the next number based on the numbers you already have. But you can't just spontaneously create something new. It's always based on the data that you already have. And that's how our mind functions. Our mind is constantly pulling in what happened before, what was going on. How can I then take all of this, process it, and project it into the future? And so when we look to the future through our minds, we are only ever going to see it within the scope of our past experiences and our current beliefs, because those beliefs are formed based on our past experiences. And so when Chantel and I are talking about jumping timelines, about looking for, a better future, what do you want? We're not talking about this from a mind level. And actually, interestingly, there have been a lot of studies that show that our mind actually isn't capable of knowing what will actually make it happy. They've done a ton of studies where they take people and they ask them, what would make you happiest? And they give the person that thing, and lo and behold, they're actually not happier. And this is because what we want, what we think we want in the mind, is based on how we think we will feel when we have that thing. So let's say that you want to have, $1 million, or you want to be famous, or you want to be in a loving relationship. You want those things. Your mind wants those things because it thinks when you have them, you'll be safe, you'll be happy, you'll be peaceful, you'll be whatever it is. So you go and you get those things because the mind thinks that's what I didn't have in the past. Again, because it's constantly pulling in our past experiences. It thinks I didn't have this in the past. And in the past, I've been unhappy. And so if I have this in the future, then I'll be happy. But when we get the thing, and we see this from, celebrities and famous people all the time, I got the thing and I wasn't happy. Why? Because your mind is not capable of knowing what's going to make you happy, what's going to bring you joy. That is a function of the soul. That is a function of the essence of who you are, the one that is connected to the divine, the one that is connected to all that is, the one that knows the capital T truth of all things. And it is our soul that is able to spontaneously create a new future. It is our soul that understands what we want because it knows that what we want isn't a thing, it's not an outcome, it's not an object, it's a feeling. But again, this is where those limiting beliefs come in, because if we think that the money is going to make us feel safe, and that's what's going to make us feel happy, but our fundamental belief about the world is that we're not safe, it will not matter what we get in life. It will not matter how much work we do to feel safe in the present if we're not looking at that core belief, I'm not safe, or I don't deserve to be safe, or whatever it is. And so here we find this really fascinating cycle with this process of setting goals, because we set ourselves up for failure when we set those goals, because not only do we often set goals that are out of reach, because we look at everything we've had in the past and we say, well, this was the scope of what I've had in the past, but I know that what I've had isn't what I want, so I'm going to pick something that I've never had, something way out here. And we stretch ourselves too far. Our mind goes too far because it wants to keep us safe, and it knows that what's unknown is unsafe. And so it's going to set a goal that's way too far out or not at all connected to what we want because it wants to keep us safe in the known. It wants us, in a way, to fail so that we stay safe. This is self-sabotaging behaviors in a nutshell. And so we set ourselves up for failure, but we also set ourselves up for disappointment because what we want is not a thing. It's not an experience that we're doing in the world. It's not a person or an object that we have. It is a feeling. And so this idea of setting New Year's resolutions and thinking about what goals you want, we're not inviting you to say, well, I want to make $100,000 and I want to do this and I want to do that. What we're asking you is, can we first and foremost look at what do you want to feel next year? What do you want to breathe into and experience on an experiential level? Not what do you want to have, not what do you want to own. What do you want to feel? Is it happiness? Is it peace? Is it joy? Is it connection? Is it safety? What do you want to feel? And what is stopping you from feeling that way right now? Because the truth of it is, 99% of the time, especially if you're listening to this, chances are you're probably fairly comfortable in your physical life. Your physical needs are probably taken care of. And that's the basis, right? So if our physical needs are taken care of, we've opened up this entire avenue of psychological, emotional, energetic needs that are now available to us, but we often stop ourselves from achieving those because of those self-limiting beliefs, because we don't feel like we're worthy, we don't feel like we're enough. So the question is, what do you want to be calling in? How would you love to live? And if that feels like too much of a stretch, okay, what do you want your life to look like? What job do you want? What relationship do you want? How much money do you want? And why do you want those things? What are those things going to give you that you don't have now? Is it happiness, joy, connection, etc.? And walk it back one step further. And what is stopping you from feeling those things now? Because that's going to lead you to that core limiting belief. And once we have that limiting belief, once we have this awareness of where we're limiting our perspective, of where we have siphoned off our worldview a little bit, or like Chantel was saying, where we have chosen which ray of sun we're operating in, which timeline, which reality we're currently connected to, then we can understand that all that's keeping us tied to that is that belief. All that's keeping us feeling small or unstable or not enough or like we can't have what we want is that belief. And so, can we do the simultaneous work of undoing that belief, of seeing how you can work through that limiting belief to expand your perspective and look at setting goals, but not in a outcome oriented way, but in an experience oriented way of how do you want to feel in the future and how can you feel that right now? Because the more that you bring that feeling into your present reality, the more you're going to prove to your mind, look, I can feel happy, I can feel joyful, I can feel connected, and the world didn't end. I am in this moment feeling loved and joyful and present. And so, therefore, that belief that I don't deserve it, that I can't have it, that whatever it is, must not be entirely true. We're just slowly poking holes in that argument. And at the same time, as you bring in more of that energy that you want to have, as you step onto that new ray of sun or that new potential that you want to be living, the universe is going to see that you've shifted your focus. Your reticular activating system is going to see that you've shifted your focus. And now we can bring in more of those positive, loving things because we've broken the cycle. We've looked at the limiting belief. We've brought awareness to that. And like Chantel said, when we bring awareness to it, when we understand it, that timeline collapses. It doesn't stay active like that loose thread that we talked about at the beginning. It gets woven into the braid of the present moment. And from that place, when we have that full awareness, we then have our full conscious and subconscious mind on board, all of our energy on board to realign towards what is it that we do want? Which ray of sun do I want to step in? Can I bring that energy into the present moment, both so that I can show myself that it's possible, that I can feel this way, and so that then my energy is aligned with that for the future and I can stay open to what outcomes come as a result of that experience. So often we have it backwards. We think that once I get the job, once I get the partner, once I do the thing, then I'll feel happy. When it's actually the opposite. It's once we have that feeling, once we believe that we can do it, once we feel aligned to that joy and connection, that suddenly we start seeing it everywhere. And that potential, that perspective that was so limited before based on our beliefs is suddenly expanded. And so it's not that it's magic, it's not that all of a sudden these potentials open up to you and you got this job and you couldn't have before. It's that your perspective opened and you believed that there were more potentials available to you. You believed you could. There's that really cliche phrase, she believed she could, so she did. But there's something to that because when we believe in ourselves, when we have cleared out those limiting beliefs and stepped into an expanded perspective, when we realize that what happens outside of us is a reflection of the beliefs and the perspectives that we have, or of our energy, whichever one resonates more for you, when we recognize that, then we can step into that aligned space and know that when we believe we can do something, we absolutely can. There's nothing holding us back except ourselves. And this is where, once again, we can bring in that perspective that Chantel had of, what Christine loves to call possibility portals, of these people who have had that experience, those people who did become a millionaire overnight, the people who did find love at first sight, the people who are living the life that you want to live, so that when your brain says, okay, yeah, well, this is all really nice talk, that if I just believe I can, then it's going to happen, but it's not really, which again is a limiting belief. But when your brain pipes up, you can say, no, but look, they did it. It's possible. That story that you're telling me that this isn't possible, it's not true because they did it. And we suddenly have created this really supportive narrative from which to continue this work of knowing that we look at our beliefs and we make sure that we have the most expanded perspective possible. We look at our energy and we understand that what we want is really just what we want to feel. And so, can we work on feeling that now? And we look at the possibilities. We look at the people who have done it before us so that our energy knows that it's possible, that it's open to us and available to us as long as we keep ourselves open and available to it.
I love this conversation. I think it's just so fun. Yesterday I was having a conversation with a client and she was saying how yesterday was just a magical day. She's like, everything is lining up. All the signs are there, all the synchronicities, all the everything. And we were having this conversation of, that's because you are lifting yourself. It's like sometimes when we walk around in life, we have our head down, right? So we're missing all of the things that are happening around us. And it's like you lifted your head up for just a moment, long enough to catch the sign, to catch the number, to catch the synchronicity, whatever it is, but it's happening all around us all the time. It's really just, are we in the vibration to see it, to catch it, and to know it? And so actually, while you were talking, she had told me yesterday she lost something and this whole story story. And then right now she just texted me and said, "Hey, I just found it." And I was like, "It's been gone for months." And I'm like, "See, because she's in the flow. She's in the flow to receive. She's in the flow to be open and expansive versus closed and in a level of contraction. And so it really can be that fast. Energy is not limited. So if we can always see ourselves as an energy body within this physical container and know that that energy can flow from us and through us, and we can connect to that, we are in that flow. And so it's unlimited and the possibilities are there. And so I think going back to the question that you said is why, what is stopping me now? That is such a powerful question because I think a lot of people, we become afraid to know what the answer is. What is stopping us? And once you know what is stopping you, then you have the power to move beyond that. You have the power to heal it. You have the power to give it a different face, a different name, a different title, whatever you want to do. But it is to be able to release it and heal it and let it go and to know that there are possibility portals out there. And then whether it's you're looking at somebody else who did it or you're looking at a younger version of yourself that didn't have it and now you do, you can become your own possibility portal. And that is by looking at different times in your life when you were wishing to be exactly where you are right now, or you're building up to that. And when you can tune into that energy and know that you yourself are your own possibility portal, I think that's so strong too, because we can create the life that we want. We don't have to hold on to the mundane. We don't have to hold on to the it's not going to happen to me storyline unless you choose to. And when you choose to do that, that is your free will, right? We all get to live the experience that we want to live. It just sometimes we got to put that work into it. We got to roll up our sleeves and say, okay, I'm going to meet the universe halfway. I'm going to go out there and put my energy into something. I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to figure this out. And the universe is going to meet you there because you are in flow to that energy and you're in flow to those opportunities and those doors to open up and to recognize. And sometimes when we have a full plate, we're so busy, we have so much going on, we can't take on another thing. The universe isn't going to give us anything more until we release it, until we let something go, until we let go of that guilt, that shame, that limited belief, the grief that holds us back, right? And so with grief, even I facilitate a conscious grief group, and it is amazing to watch the people that are grieving their loved ones or a past identity or their pet or whatever they're grieving through. I find it so interesting how they are starting to see grief in a different way because they're taking that conscious perspective of it. They're recognizing that, yes, there's this sadness that we are overwhelmed with because the love of our life has transitioned or whoever it is that they lost, but also that they themselves are still living. And so when we can see that life is still happening for us and to us, and we can be the one that steps forward into that, they really are stepping into their power and pulling back the veils and pulling back their own layers that have been burdening them and holding them down. And so it really is an invitation again to step into that version of yourself because what are you going to lose? What is the worst thing that can happen is if you put yourself out there, is that you don't get what you want. Well, that's okay. Do it again. How many times do you have to fail and fall before you can succeed? And so it really is taking all these different chunks of your life and different perspectives and putting it all together and looking at it through a different lens and saying, I can do this, and trusting and believing in yourself, and trusting and believing that life isn't always this big, scary place. It can be, but that's the reality in which we put it into, because even in the most scariest or most saddest experiences, things will overcome. You can overcome it, but it is bringing up those more emotions that are going to help you to feel happy, to help you to be more at peace within yourself, to be the observer of what's happening versus being an active participant in what's happening. Because when you're the observer, it gives you that buffer zone to step back and say, what part of this am I meant to receive? What lesson am I meant to have? And what is that? Why is this coming into my life right now? And so when we're doing that thought process, it really can show up what it is we're ready to let go of, why we've created this reality, and how can we shift ourselves so we can step into a new one.
Absolutely. And, on that idea of what's the worst thing that can happen if you go after something, you're not going to get it. It's such a powerful awareness to have because often we hold ourselves back from really stepping into or claiming that this is what we want because we feel like it's not going to happen. And this is where I love bringing in this awareness that there are really three main kinds of no's that we get when we go after something and it doesn't happen, or we don't get the job, or we don't get the person. There's not right now, not ever, or just not the right thing for you. And I think oftentimes when we go after something and we don't get it, we internalize it. We feel like we have failed somehow, that we are a failure, we are a disappointment, and we don't try again. But if we bring in this awareness that every no isn't a failure, it's a redirect, it's the universe telling you something. So, what is the meaning? What is the awareness that you're meant to receive from this experience? Is it a yes, this is the right thing, but just not right now? Just stay in the unknowing for a minute and see what unfolds. Is it a no, not ever, we need to redirect? And there's something else that you're supposed to be putting your awareness on? Or is it a this just isn't for you? Maybe it's a you're looking in the wrong place. There's this scene in Indiana Jones that I always think of where they see that the bad guys are digging on this completely wrong place because of a map. And they're like, they're digging in the wrong place. We're supposed to be digging over here. And I think a lot of times when we get a no from the universe, that's all it is. It's not that we've done something wrong. It's not that we failed. It's the universe saying, hey, why haven't you looked over here yet? Why are you so focused on this one thing? And this goes back to what we were talking about how our mind doesn't know what we want. It doesn't know what's going to make us happy, but so often we get so laser focused on this one thing, whether it's because our minds think that that's what we're going to want, it's because we're using that thing to avoid those heavier emotions so that we don't have to feel them and process them, or we're looking at it because that's just the cycle of self-sabotaging behavior or the cycle of limiting beliefs that we're stuck in. Whatever it is, we get so laser focused and we forget to be open to the potentials, because again, being open to the potentials means being open to the unknown, and that's a scary place for our mind. And so this is where that invitation is, to come back into a more heart-centered place, to come back into how are you feeling. Can you let your heart, your soul, your whatever you want to call that inner essence of you be the guiding light? Can we let our minds take a back seat, or at the very least, be co creators with this inner essence? Because a lot of the time, what happens, where this discomfort that we feel at the end of the year going into a new year comes from, is that our mind has the reins and we're trying to make this picture perfect future out of an Excel spreadsheet. And that's just not going to happen because that's not what the Excel spreadsheet was designed to do. And so can we allow it to become a co-creator with that inner essence, the one who knows what you want? When you really are fully honest with yourself, you know what you want, you know what you need, you know what feeling you want to have, but your mind is holding you back from it because it is scared, it's hurt, it's having all of these limiting beliefs and feelings. And so can we do that work to be aware of ourselves? And that's why the first step in this process was, can you look over the year? Can you acknowledge what was hard? Can you acknowledge what was beautiful? And can you find the meaning in all of it so that they get integrated, those strands get woven in, and you can fully arrive here? And from that place, then you can reconnect. You can take a few deep breaths and you can look towards your future and decide, what is it that I really want? What is it that I want to feel? What do I want to pull in? And from that place, can you then step into the more fun aspect of this exercise of looking at how can you get creative with it? What's something that you can do to feel like you've really called in that energetic timeline, knowing that the version of you that is experiencing the things that you want to experience has their own unique energetic signature? We know this from, a piece of wood has its own energy and a metal rod has its own energy and the screws have their own energy. But when we put them together, suddenly it's a desk. And the desk has a completely different energy than the individual pieces. And we're the same way. The us that's experiencing what we want to experience has a different energetic signature than the us in this present moment. If they were the same, then we would be experiencing what we wanted to experience. And so, how can you tap into the energy of the you that is living the life you want to live? And what is something you can do to anchor that energy into the present moment? Is that literally visualizing the life you want to have and pulling an energetic cord from it into your life? Is that making a vision board? Is that writing out a list of, I am so grateful that I have XYZ, as if you already have it, folding it up, drawing a Reiki symbol on it, and putting it in your Reiki box? Is it telling someone about your dreams? Is it writing them out and giving it to the earth, to nature, so that you can invite nature in to co create it? Is it doing a daily meditation? What is it for you that's going to make you feel like you are connected to that timeline? We've had students who buy a piece of jewelry or a piece of clothing that that future version of themselves would wear, and they bring it into their present day so that they know when they wear that ring, when they wear that shirt, I am embodying that version of myself. And it's this little affirmation to you that it's possible. When we take those little moments, it's affirming to ourselves that it's possible to feel that energy, that we are worthy to be that version of ourselves. And so we're going to bring a little piece of them into our daily life. And so as we go through this conversation, as we're giving you these tools for taking these steps, and you've done the journaling and you've brought in the awareness and you've woven the timelines and you've fully arrived in the present and you've taken your deep breaths and you've looked at, what's the limiting belief? What do I want to experience? What do I want to feel? The last step of that is, now that you know how you want to feel, now that you know, or you're trying to believe that you are worthy of this, how can you then bring a piece of that into your present life? What exercise can you do to bring that energy into your energy? And notice what happens. Be open to being surprised. Be open to an outcome that your mind hasn't seen before, and allow that to unfold before you.
Mhm. I really liked the stepping into the embodiment of it. My voice is going out. That, hold on. I think I'm going to get a sore throat. But really stepping into the embodiment of that feeling, that emotion, um, that energy that really pulls you forward. I love that, because that truly is what it is. It's, we are embodying the different parts of ourselves, or the experiences that we want, the destiny that we envision. And when you were talking about how you can see that version of yourself who is already on that timeline, that's it. It's already existing out there. It's just us aligning ourselves with that version of what we want and who we are and all of it, so we can pull it into our current reality. And so when you can see that meditative, like, visual of, I'm here in this future timeline, what do I got to do to get there? That is the goal of it. That is how we can energetically align ourselves up to be able to embody that experience. And so it's just trusting. It's pulling back the layers of doubt and trusting that it is meant for you, and trusting that everything that is meant to come your way is already coming. It's already on its way. It's just us being open to receive it. And so it doesn't matter where you're starting at right now, because the future can always shift and change in your highest potential for your highest good. And you just have to trust and know that that is coming. Whoever it is, whatever it is that you are desiring is coming your way, as long as you are open-minded, open-hearted, open to the possibilities of outcome. And with that, it's just waiting for it to come. Like, it's just on your way. And so go enjoy life, go live life, go be happy, do all the things so that that can come forward for you.
Absolutely. So I hope this conversation has given you something to chew on, a new perspective of that transition from one year to the next. We would love to hear what your top takeaway is, how any of the exercises or tools that we gave you today went for you, what activity you're using to pull that future timeline into your present. We would love to hear all of these things over in our Moon Rising Shamanic Mystics Facebook group. And of course, know that we are all open and available to support you. So if this is something that you want to work through with one of us, if you want to have that step by step process, have it laid out for you, be guided through it. Know that we are all open and available. We have discounts on our one-on-one sessions for the rest of the year. And if you're interested in doing this kind of work, if leaning into the spiritual and shamanic perspectives of life, finding new tools and techniques to connect to your true self, to honor your intuition, to calm and release those limiting beliefs in a longer 4-month container, our Soul Rising Shamanic Reiki online course is now open for early bird enrollment. So if that's something you're interested, you can leave us a comment, you can send us a message, and we will get you more information. We can hop on a free 15-minute call just to see if it's the right next step for you. But in the meantime, I hope that this has brought you some inspiration and a new way of approaching this time of year. We would love to hear your shares wherever you want to reach us, Facebook group, email, message, or otherwise. And until next time, may you awaken to the whispers of wisdom rising from within.